Imagine every human being on Earth fit inside one small stadium. Not a city, not a country, one stadium, 70,000 seats, that's all of us. That was how close we came to vanishing forever. No second chance, no comeback, just gone. 70,000 years ago, something woke up beneath the jungles of what is now Indonesia. It didn't just erupt, it tore a hole through the sky. The explosion was so powerful, it was heard on the other side of the planet. The sky went dark. Not for days, not for weeks, for years. Animals starved, forests collapsed, rivers dried up, and the small, fragile creature we call Homo sapiens, us, nearly disappeared with them. But here's the question that keeps scientists up at night. If the world truly went dark, how did anyone survive at all? To understand what happened, we have to go back. 70,000 years ago, our ancestors were doing something remarkable. They were winning. Small bands of hunters moved across the African continent. They made tools from stone. They controlled fire. They communicated. They were spreading outwards slowly, following rivers and coastlines. But they were fragile, dangerously fragile. No stored medicine, no written knowledge, no city walls. A single bad season could wipe a group off the map entirely. And deep beneath the island of Sumatra, something was preparing that would make every bad season they had ever known look like a gentle breeze. Mount Toba had been building pressure for centuries. The magma chamber beneath it was the size of a small country. When it finally broke open, it didn't just erupt, it detonated. The eruption released more than 2,800 cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere. To put that in perspective, Krakatoa, one of the most famous eruptions in history, released less than 1 cubic kilometer. Mount St. Helens, a fraction of that. Toba wasn't a volcanic eruption, it was a planetary event. The ash cloud rose 50 kilometers into the sky. It spread across Asia, the Middle East, and deep into Africa within days. The particles didn't fall back down quickly. They rose into the stratosphere and spread like a blanket across the entire planet. Scientists call what happened next a volcanic winter. The sun was blocked, not dimmed, blocked. Global temperatures dropped by an estimated 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. In some regions, they dropped even further. Forests that had stood for thousands of years died within a single growing season. Grasslands turned gray and crumbled. The herds of animals that early humans depended on for food collapsed. Prey animals starved first, then the predators, then us. This wasn't a drought that lasted a season. Scientists believe the volcanic winter lasted between 6 and 10 years. Think about that. 10 years of a sky that never fully cleared. 10 years of failed hunts and empty hands coming back from the dark. The cold was taking them one by one, but the cold was only the first enemy. When food runs out, something invisible starts to break. Trust. For early humans, the group wasn't just company. It was survival itself. You didn't hunt alone. You didn't sleep alone. You didn't grieve alone. The group was the only thing standing between any individual and the dark. But when there isn't enough food for 10 people start doing the math. Groups that had shared meat and warmth for generations began to fracture. Larger bands split apart. Smaller groups walked away from each other and into the wilderness alone. The ones who split off didn't last. And locked inside our DNA today is the proof of what happened. Scientists studying human genetics discovered something deeply unsettling. Our DNA is too similar. Every person alive on Earth today, from Islamabad to Iceland, from Lagos to Los Angeles, shares genes that are far too alike for a species that has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. A healthy species has wide genetic variation built up across many generations. We don't have that. Our genetics show that at some point nearly everyone died. The human population may have collapsed to somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 individuals. Some estimates go lower, 10,000 people on the entire planet, scattered, starving, surrounded by a world that was trying to erase them. Some gave up. Some sat down and didn't get back up, but a few refused. The ones who refused to die made a decision. They moved. The food was gone where they stood, so they walked toward where it might still exist. A small group, possibly the direct ancestors of every non-African human alive today, followed the coastline. The land was dead, but the ocean was still alive. Fish still swam. Shellfish still clung to rocks. Seaweed still grew. The volcanic winter had devastated the forests and plains, but the sea had a kind of buffer the land didn't, so they waded in. They pried shellfish off rocks with bare hands. They ate things they had never eaten before. Every step forward was a gamble. Every morning they woke up was a small miracle, because behind them was certain death, and ahead of them was only the unknown. They chose the unknown. And here is where the story turns. The ash settled. It took years, but it settled. The sun broke through. Temperatures climbed back. Seeds that had been buried under ash found their way to light. First one green shoot, then 10, then a field, then a forest. The animals came back slowly, and the humans who had refused to give up were still there, older, tougher, changed. That tiny group, 10,000 people on a dying planet, started to grow. They moved across coastlines, across mountains, across ice, generation by generation. They filled the world back up. Every city you have ever seen, every person you have ever loved, every child who has ever laughed, all of it traces back to a small group of people who refused to quit when the sky went dark. They didn't have hospitals or governments or maps. They had fire. They had each other. And they had the decision to keep walking. You exist today because of what they chose in the worst moment in human history. Because they kept the fire burning. Because they held on to each other. Because they moved. The footprints they left in the ash became the foundation of everything. But here is something most people never stop to wonder. The ones who survived weren't the only ones who tried. The people who stayed behind in Africa, the ones who didn't follow the coast outward, they faced the same darkness, and something strange happened to them inside it. Pressed into caves along the southern coast of Africa, surrounded by ash and cold and silence, they did something no creature on earth had ever done before. They picked up a piece of red rock and pressed their hand against a cave wall. They made a mark, not to survive, just to say, I was here. That was the first art, the first symbol, the birth of the human mind as we know it today. A catastrophe didn't just nearly end humanity, it may have created it. And that story, the moment a species stopped just surviving and started thinking, begins exactly where this one ends.